now we're going to move over. I told you last week that we were going to do an Address the Council with our good buddy Mr. Sunday Movies, and he couldn't do it last week, but he is going to do it this week. He put together a little piece. The first one he did was great. I've been able to collaborate with him a bunch of times on his channels. I think he's one of the funniest dudes out there talking about Star Wars. Big fan of this guy, and he's addressing the council today. Enjoy.
Star Wars is the property that seemingly can't be stopped. Even in the years where no movies were in production, additional material was able to keep the world alive through role-playing games, books, comic books, video games, parodies, viral videos where kids have their lives ruined for a number of years, animated TV series, animated movies that in my mind are amazing but are almost certainly terrible, not to mention the never-ending stream of fan-created projects, the quality of which is flat out phenomenal. Star Wars has never been more popular, and we know that because it continues to shatter records in all mediums. I mean, Star Wars issue number 1 broke a long-standing comic book sales record from 1993. 1993! That was the year that Charlie Sheen, Chris O'Donnell, and Kiefer Sutherland Three Musketeers movie came out. Of course, being 1993, I could have said Jurassic Park. But that movie is kind of timeless, and I feel nothing emphasizes the passage of time more than thinking back to an era where Charlie Sheen could headline a film. I think though there is a risk associated with the endless bombardment of Star Wars content, and that is that people will eventually tire. Now, I'm not saying this will happen anytime soon. I'd be shocked if it occurred any less than a decade from now. And of course, there will always be the die-hard fans. But as far as the general audience goes, certain franchises or genres end up not having the appeal that they used to. Just look at how Independence Day Resurgence was received. Or really just how people see disaster movies in general. Remember when all it took was the promise of a flying cow to get you into a cinema? Yeah, those days are gone. So what I'm suggesting, and I'm not really 100% sold on the idea myself, is that at the conclusion of episode 9, and then whatever spin-off film comes after it, Disney and Lucasfilm take a cinematic break from the Star Wars franchise. Maybe 3 to 5 years? So that the hunger for new Star Wars films doesn't subside. Because if we'd have gotten a new Star Wars movie, say, every 3 years or so after 1983, there is no chance that the response would have been so overwhelming to the announcement of the prequels. And that's also assuming that they'd all be good. And if the Star Trek films are any indication, they certainly wouldn't have been.
What does God need with a starship?
But on the topic of Star Trek, there's an example of a franchise that completely burnt out. They kept making movies until nobody cared and the last season was taken off air. Sure, it's back now, but only after a substantial break and reinvention. Remember the hype surrounding the release of The Phantom Menace? Massive. Insane. There had never been anything like it. And there hadn't been anything like it until Star Wars again took a break and then episode 7 was announced, which of course stemmed from a substantial hiatus. Star Wars films to me are an event, like Christmas, and I think it would be wise if Disney never lost that Christmas feeling that Star Wars can give. And I know associating Star Wars with Christmas is not an ideal parallel for obvious reasons, but what I'm saying is, I don't want to get to the point where it's just, oh okay, here comes another Star Wars film. And there is the risk that maybe this will happen, especially if Disney decides to go from 1 to 2 movies a year, which is entirely possible. So here's my question to the council. Christian, Riley, Tiffany, Mark, and those watching or listening. What do you think about a small break from Star Wars after the 3rd spin-off? And if there was a break, how long do you think it should be? I know it seems a little premature for such a suggestion, seeing as we're only 1 film in, but by 2020, we'll have seen 6 in total. And I know the proposition of a break in Star Wars films means there's a chance that some of us won't be alive by then. I mean, people could very well be tuning in to the Schmo Nose Show, because Alice is dead. He's always out and about. A lot can happen on the road. That's all I'm saying. Also, I'm not suggesting that what's going on with the TV series or the comic books or whatever are ceased. Because we all know how much Christian loves his bloody Star Wars books. Plus, like I said, it's the additional materials that kept Star Wars alive before the prequels and after the prequels. And also during the prequels, when it turned out that the prequels, maybe some of them weren't so good. I mean, I'm not saying that. I think they're wonderful. Sorry. So a Star Wars break at some point. Is this a good idea? I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. Back to you guys.
All right, so let's get to his questions. As far as we've had this conversation here. In 10 years from now, the stat that he put out there, the fact that in 2020 we'll already have 6 movies, will the regular, not us, because we want movies to come out for Star Wars forever. And the hardcore fans watching this show, probably same thing, but the hardcore movie fan, the regular movie fan that goes to the theater, is a break a good idea for Star Wars. Like he proposed a 3 to 5 year break after Episode 9. Good idea or bad idea?
I think it's a great idea. I love that piece that Mr. Sunday Movies created, by the way. That was
he's
well
great.
done. That guy is so funny and such a great Star Wars fan. And I don't think you can separate it as to just casual movie fan or Star Wars fan. Like, every hardcore Star Wars fan needs a bunch of Star Wars movies, like, every year. You know, I don't, because I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan, but I like having breaks. I think we need time to come down from our excitement and to rev up again. Tom Petty said it best. Anybody?
What for what?
The waiting is the hardest part.
That's
and
what he
sometimes
said.
It's you need to build up that anticipation. Like, that's what I'm worried about. When Christian has his theory, and I subscribe to it when he says it, that we could have more than one Star Wars movie a year. I don't think I ever want to see that. And I think that after Episode 9, I think there should be a break. I don't want to see too many different adventures like Rogue One. I love this stuff so much. I want each piece to take its time, to be carefully crafted. As much as I wanted to see new Star Wars developments in that 16-year gap from 83 to 99, part of the excitement, a lot of it, around the Phantom Menace hype was that there was a new Star Wars movie, and the same thing with Force Awakens. We always talk about what? You're never going to get that experience again that we got with Force Awakens. Maybe it's not the best movie that we're ever going to see going forward in the Star Wars universe, but what that felt like when we were in the theater the first time that night, hell, the fifth time that night, you're never going to get that again unless you have some gaps in between Star Wars movies.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way with it. I think that I understand the points of both Mr. Sunday Movies and yourself are making. Now, that being said, I do think that the saga films could take a break. I do think that after Episode 9, if you waited about 4 or 5 years to put out Episode 10, 11, and 12, I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that's a smart idea. And the other reason I think it's a smart idea is because you can explore more inside of the standalone movies. Because what Lucasfilm ultimately is going to do is very similar to what Marvel is doing with their films. And basically every movie that they do is a different genre. Whether you look at Ant-Man and it's a kind of crime, it's a heist film, and then you look at Doctor Strange as kind of surreal, almost like a horror film. You know, it's like you have sci-fi, you know, and it's like you have like these different things that they're doing there. Star Wars has so much capability to do that for all the different time periods that even though it's going to become its own genre. So right now, if you're looking at it, because it's not going to be, you don't have to choose to see every Star Wars movie that comes out, because maybe there's one, particularly maybe they start to boot a Knights of the Republic, maybe they do a Yoda trilogy, an Obi-Wan trilogy, whatever these things might be. I'm not saying I don't want to see Yoda either, but I'm just saying as far as these movies go, you put them out there and you give it more time to breathe. If you do the Obi-Wan and it works really well, then you have more time to do another one, a sequel, the Han Solo movie. All those movies can live there for a while. That I think that the standalones should have like the either once a year or every other year, and you can take a break with the saga films or whatever it might be. So
I mean, obviously the easiest correlation is Marvel, what they're doing with their movies. And if you were to look at something and say every single year we got an Avengers movie, it would be overkill.
Right.
But the fact is that we do have a little bit of a break in between, because we are getting the standalone character-driven films, and we do get continuation. But that's also being said with the standalones. We don't get a Guardians movie every year. We don't get a Thor movie every year. There's breaks even between the standalone ones.
And it hasn't been 10 years yet for those movies either. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that what we'll start seeing is fans becoming a little bit pickier about the things that they choose to read. I mean, even talking with Riley, where he's like, I'm not going to read those books. I don't have time. And that's not a bad thing, but it's like, I think the more content that's out there, whether it's animated series or a Netflix series or like the story films or the episodic ones or books, comics, whatever you're getting, people are going to start to be a little bit pickier about what they consume. I mean, obviously there's people like Christian who's going to read every single thing, and me try and read every single thing. But I do think having a little bit of downtime in between, even for those type of things, it builds the anticipation for it. It builds the excitement for it again. So I think we're in a really unique time because we haven't experienced anything like this before. Marvel really started that, where it's like, okay, now we expect it every year. We expect something different to come out from them. So I think that we're already a little bit in that mindset. We talked about this at the very beginning, before The Force Awakens even came out. What was it? The Journey to The Force Awakens, where the list of everything that came out that they were going to release. And I was like, there's no way that I'm going to read all of that stuff.
Right.
Like, it's overwhelming. So I just think it's going to cause people to be a little bit pickier. So I think that we definitely should have breaks. I don't know if 5 years 5
But it
years
hasn't
seems
hurt
like a
you,
lot.
though. Even though overwhelming with the book stuff.
But I'm not there yet. Like, I feel like once we get to the next episode,
Yeah.
and we've gotten standalones and these 3 books come out, because I mean there's some of the, especially like the young adult ones that I have that I haven't read yet.
Right.
They're just on my bookshelf. I plan on reading them, but I'm not caught up yet. And then you
Right.
get to the point where it's like like I know people feel this way about the comic book world, where it's like there's so many comics I don't even know where to start. I'm just not going to do any of it, and I don't want that to happen with the Star Wars universe.
My answer is going to be layered. I think yes, in general, I think that when you build the anticipation by taking a little break, I think that's good for movie fans, even for us, the hardcore Star Wars fan, because it's like you said, Ellis, it builds to this anticipation where we're getting a new Star Wars movie. Now we're getting a new Star Wars movie every year. So, however, if Episode 9 ends with a new story thread, I don't know how, or if it's close-ended like all the trilogies have been, it could warrant a break, which I would recommend you do. However, if Disney is thinking far ahead, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're thinking of episodes 10, 11, and 12, and they introduce a nugget of something that can carry over into the next trilogy, that might get me to where I go, now I need to see this.
You're talking same characters.
Same
like
characters.
If it's still,
If like Rey, if it continues on with
Yeah.
Rey's story or Finn's story, we don't know yet. Because, yeah, everybody brought it up. Marvel is doing something very special. I was getting a little, after Age of Ultron, I was a little like, okay.
Yeah.
I was cooling a bit. Then Civil War happened. Now I am reinvigorated because I want to see, there's a report now that the Russos actually said Cap is no longer Captain America. He's dropped the mantle. So for me, I'm now invested in Steve Rogers in Avengers Infinity War because he's no longer Cap. He's running around doing these things. That's interesting to me. That's a story development I love. So if that was in the Star Wars universe, I would say, keep going, please. I need to know. And that's dependent on story. So, but for the standalones, we could see the same thing happen. An Old Republic movie comes out. That's a spinoff, and it just hooks me. Now I need to see it more. But if we're talking about the audience, like my mother, who doesn't know anything about these movies and is like, Rogue One is episode 8, or I don't know what
What
it
did
is.
she say?
Well, Rogue One is obviously a sequel with Ray Finley who's in it.
No. Ray Skywalker is not in the movie.
Ray Skywalker is not in this movie, and
Don't tell his mom that
Why?
it's Ray Skywalker.
Well, she
you're
should know the
poisoning
truth.
her
I'm
information.
Yeah.
sorry, Mrs.
So-
Ray.
Bad info.
Luke Skywalker actually had a daughter.
Well, yes, Mr. Ray.
Has
Take
been
that to the bank.
confirmed, and it's obviously in Rogue One.
And
so-
Darth Plagueis is also in the movie.
Oh, Darth Plagueis is a nice boy.
There you go. All right. That's everything, I think.